Hi, my name is Samantha Engel, and I am the director of the Reed Association of Saginaw County. And I just so happen to also be a historian. So that's why I'm here for Women's History Month to share a cool story. So when I was in graduate school, I really liked focusing on the history of education. I liked learning about how public education was set up, about one-room schoolhouses, the development of high schools, all of it. So I have a pretty interesting lady to tell you about today, and her name is Otillia Frisch, and she made a really big impact on education here in Saginaw County. So Frisch was born in 1892 in Frankentrost, and so that was a very rural area at the time, and travel being what it was and sort of not such a focus on education. Once she was done with 8th grade at her local one-room schoolhouse and she graduated, there wasn't much of an expectation for her to continue school. So she actually moved to Saginaw, where she moved in with a family and worked as a babysitter. There was a high school here in Saginaw, but living out in Frankentrost, there was no way for her to travel here to go to school, so this was her next best option. But 2 years later, her family moved to Saginaw, so she had the opportunity to quit her job, move back in with her family, and then she could focus on her studies. So in 1912, she graduated from the Saginaw County Normal School, which was the school anybody would have attended to kind of get the teaching certification they needed at that time. It was a teacher training school. And once she graduated, she got a job teaching in Buena Vista. Now, at that time, if you were placed at a school that was too far away, you would actually sort of work out your own way to stay with the families of the children who attended the school you were at. But luckily for Frisch, she lived close enough that she could walk to school. So she lived at home, walked to her job, and she made $50 a month. Now, after doing this for a few years, she was actually appointed to the Assistant Commissioner of Education here in Saginaw. And her focus, she was really charged with improving education in rural areas. And as we sort of mentioned at the beginning, the rural areas, they had one-room schoolhouses. A lot of times kids wouldn't start going to school until the harvest was done in the fall. Then winter would prove to have a lot of travel issues. And then once it was planting season, you were pulled out of school and expected to work on the farm. And so they wanted to improve these opportunities for students. So Frisch recounts that she spent a lot of time traveling upwards of 30 miles outside of downtown Saginaw to visit these schools, these one-room schoolhouses, talk with families, talk with teachers, and try to create some kind of plan to improve things. A few years later, in 1921, she was actually promoted and became the commissioner of schools here in Saginaw. And so then she was able to really advocate for a lot of these causes, again, focusing on the rural schools, increasing educational opportunities, creating more consolidated schools throughout the county. And she worked to introduce art, music, and nature studies into the school system. She really wanted to provide students with opportunities that she didn't necessarily have when she was, 14 years old and graduating from 8th grade. So Frisch served in this capacity until 1947, and it was an elected position. So she was continually reelected, and then, there were just some changes as to what the position was, and so she no longer held that. But she continued to work towards bettering education. She was involved in a lot of local and state organizations with that goal in mind. And she ended up living to the age of 98. She passed away in 1990. And 7 years later, in 1997, she was inducted into the Saginaw County Hall of Fame. So I actually have a really cool artifact that kind of brings all of this together. This was something from my husband, and this is an 8th grade diploma, so something that we would expect to get once we finish 12th grade, but it was 8th grade at the time. It's from 1926, and this was my husband's grandmother's uncle, and so he received this after attending the school that was at the corner of Lone Road and Geddes Road out in Thomas Township. And if you look closely as to the officials who signed it, Otillia Frisch's name is there. So history is always a little more fun when you can make a local connection, and it's so much more impactful when you can make this very personal connection to family history as well. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned a little something about women's history. It's also National Reading Month, so I think Otillia would appreciate it if everybody picked up a book for a little while. And if you wish to learn more about the Read Association, you can feel free to visit our website, which is readsaginaw.org, or you can follow us on Facebook. We're pretty active there. So thanks so much for having me. I hope you enjoyed.